everybody. This is Michael Reno Harrell with Mostly Acoustic, and today I'm just outside of Bristol, Tennessee with my good friend Tim White.
Hello,
how you
Mike.
doing, Tim?
I'm doing great. Good to have you over here.
Oh, it's nice to be back in your house. There's so much to look at here.
It's like a museum.
It is,
I've been told.
I tell you what. It's amazing all the stuff that you've got. We're going to talk a little bit about you and about what all you've been up to since you and I have been together, and what all you've been up to most of your life. Now, you're originally from Roanoke, Virginia, right?
That's right. Born and raised in Roanoke, Virginia. Went through high school there and ended up moving down here in the birthplace of country music back in 1974.
74. Mm-hmm. Let's go way back. What's your first memory of music?
I remember getting up when I was a toddler or barely out in that age bracket and seeing Don Reno and Red Smiley on the top of the morning show.
Oh, yeah.
On WDBJ TV. Mom would be fixing breakfast and that black and white TV would be on. There'd be Don Reno and Red Smiley, and Irv Sharp was the host. He's a piano picker. Yeah. So he was on there wearing it out with them, and that's what I remember seeing. Mac McGahey, yeah, and little Ronnie Reno.
And Ronnie was on there. That's
he was
right.
about 12, 14 years old. He was on it, but it was that's what I remember.
What really was sponsored by what grocery
Kroger.
Store? Kroger, that's right.
Yeah, Kroger sponsored it, and really a great show, and that planted the seed in my mind. Then of course I would see Lester and Earl. They had a TV show. Theirs was, I guess, nationally syndicated. The Reno and Smiley Top of the Morning show was pretty much a regional show.
Yep.
But then I remember seeing, what was his name? I can't think of it. Anyway, there were several music shows that were on at the time. But Reno and Smiley is my first memory.
When did you think maybe I want to participate in that? I want to learn to play something.
Well, I always liked music. My mom kind of held me and my sister at gunpoint and made us take piano lessons when I was about 11 or 12 years old. But, you know, that really came in handy later. I learned to read music. I can't do it now. I forgot everything I learned. I tell people I use a lot of grease on my hair and my mind slips, you know. But learning that piano scale, the scale on the piano, on the keyboard, really has helped me a lot since I got into the music. But I got really, to answer your question, into the bluegrass and old time and Americana scene when I moved down here in 1974 and discovered the Carter family fold nearby and all these pickings and barn dances that not as many of them as there used to be, but I started going out to those. So I was about 18 years old when I got into it.
So when did you start playing? When did you take up an instrument, a stringed instrument?
About 1975.
Yeah, how old were you?
I was 18, 19 years old.
Yeah. So what music were you listening to in high school? Were you listening to bluegrass?
A little bit, but mainly rock and roll.
Yeah,
of course, Beatles and Stones and CCR and things like that. But I always, bluegrass was always in my mind, you know. Like I said, watching Reno and Smiley, and I always liked Lester and Earl. They were my favorites.
Sure.
Stanley Brothers, people like that. But when I was growing up, I listened to a lot of rock and roll. Yeah. Classic rock and roll.
Now, a lot of people know, and maybe a lot of people don't know, who see your television show, that you also have been a music promoter for a long time. How'd that get started?
Well, when I was a lot younger, I wanted to, I just want to pick a banjo. That's my main instrument. Of course, I have plenty of guitars, as you've seen in the museum here. But I just wanted to play the banjo, and I got to thinking, what would be the best way to play some shows without knocking around trying to be a face in the crowd band trying to get booked on shows. And I thought, well, put the shows on yourself.
And then you can be the opener.
Then I could be the opener.
For the national acts.
That's exactly right. I worked with Bill Monroe. I worked with, opened for him, or opened for Jim and Jesse, who were dear, dear friends. Jesse still is, of course. Mike Wiseman, Ralph Stanley, Doc Watson. So I'd put these shows on. We'd open the
first generation bluegrass.
Yeah, it was. I mean, back then, I was just trying to make it happen. Maybe make a buck if I was lucky. But looking back on it, man, what a proving ground that was.
Yeah.
And got to meet a lot of people and do a lot of things that that most people would give their eye teeth to been able to have done, and I appreciate that.
And you've been a radio disc jockey. You've had your own radio show for a long time, I know.
Yeah, I think I broke into radio. Joe Morrell, who started the Morrell music stores in this area, got me into broadcasting.
Of East Tennessee.
Yeah, on WOPI in Bristol, the same station that Tennessee Ernie Ford got his start. Joe got me started in 1989. So I've been in radio since then.
And you have a syndicated bluegrass show that's on probably 60 stations.
60 to 70, and a lot of them stream on the internet. TheTimWhiteBluegrassShow.com. Put the "the" in it. I had to put the "the" because someone else evidently had the rest of it. But TheTimWhiteBluegrassShow.com, and all of my affiliates are there that you can listen. And like I said, many of them stream.
And you put that show together right here in your home studio.
That's right. My studio's in the basement here, and don't tell anybody, but a lot of times I do that show in my pajamas.
Oh.
Yeah. Don't let word get out on that.
Now, a lot of people probably aren't aware that you're an artist, a visual artist. You've been in the sign business, you know, making signs for people for a long time, I know. But your signs are really unique. You do a lot of hand carving and hand lettering and gold leaf and things that...
Pinstriping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll show some of that. Tim's going to take us out in his workshop and show us a lot of the great memorabilia that's out there.
Yeah, that sign shop supported my music habit for years and years.
Yeah.
That was my livelihood. And now, over the last 20, 25 years, they've swapped places. You know, I make my living with music and the Song of the Mountains television show and radio.
Yeah.
But I still love the old school sign painting. It's
well, you and I have that in common too. You know, I grew up working in sign shops. My first job in a sign shop was with Brown and Gray Signs in Morristown, Tennessee, and I would answer the phone. That was one of my jobs, and I'd say Brown and Gray Signs, and somebody would inevitably say, "Don't they come in any other colors?"
Well, mine's white signs.
White signs.
Yeah,
right.
so
nothing there.
Yep.
And the reason I went to work there is because I knew one of the partners, Buck Brown, played the mandolin. So I started hanging out at the sign shop. Pretty soon they said, "Why don't you do something while you're here?" So I started learning to paint signs.
I've seen your work. You did good work.
Well, thanks. Your most famous piece of art, and we'll show you this right here. Your most famous piece of art is the mural on the side of that building on downtown in Bristol.
On State Street.
On State Street, that commemorates the Bristol Sessions, which we'll talk about too. Yeah. But before we do that, let's talk about your television show, Song of the Mountains. It's on PBS stations, 160 stations.
190 outlets, 190 outlets across the United States. Our potential reach about 145 million people a year in our 16th season as we speak today.
Yeah.
So it's been a real blessing. It's been a real. You've been on it several times. You know how it works.
5, thank you.
Yeah. Well,
thank you
I'm a
very
big
much.
fan of yours.
Well, I'm a big fan of the show. It's amazing. I mean, I've told you before. I'm being a Walmart in Pueblo, Colorado, and some guy walk up and go, "You're that Song of the Mountains guy."
Yeah.
You know, I hear about it all over America. I mean, I know a lot of people watch it.
As Bill Monroe would say, it's mighty powerful.
It is mighty powerful.
Yeah.
How did that get started?
The Song of the Mountains?
Yeah, how did you get involved in that?
Well, long story short, we talked a minute ago about me promoting shows and being the opening act, and for over 20 years, I promoted shows, booked those first generation bluegrassers plus others, and we'd open the show. I'd work the sound. I'd stick my neck out many times, lose a little money.
Yep.
Be backstage praying that I wasn't going to lose money. Sometimes I'd make $100, and I would wonder, why am I doing this? You know, it's very stressful, but I was doing it because I wanted to pick.
Yeah.
And I wanted to pick at good shows. And we always, win, lose, or draw, we put on good shows.
Yeah.
So I would question, you know, why would many times I'd quit. Then the next morning I'd wake up and get going again.
Yeah.
But fast forward to 2005, I got a call from Joe Ellis up in Marion, Virginia. He said, "Sam Russell and I've got this idea. Would you come up and meet with us?" I said, "What idea is that?" He said, "We want to do a nationally syndicated television show that highlights bluegrass, old time, and Americana music from this region. My ears pointed on that, and I went up there, and long story short, it was Song of the Mountains. We started it in 2005, and this is 2020 now, and we're in our 16th season, and that's why I did all of those other shows leading up to being able to have the opportunity to do this wonderful show called Song of the Mountains.
You had gotten to know so many of the major acts in bluegrass music that when it came time to start doing the show, you knew who to call.
Yeah,
and they would answer your phone calls because they knew you. It
was pretty easy because I was already, as they say, in the loop. Not only did I know the big names, I knew a lot of the lesser names that were really, really good. And to this day, we do that. I'll book a Doyle Lawson as a headliner and then put 2 or 3 other lesser known bands with them. But that is the biggest leg up that any up and coming band can have.
Well, I know it's had an effect on our career, you know.
And that makes
like
me
I say,
feel,
people all over America know who I am because they've seen me on that show. So,
well, if you play on Song of the Mountains, you will reach more people with that 30-minute segment, and you know this. You'll reach more people with that 30-minute segment than you'll reach with all of your live appearances your whole career. And it's everybody except one person. Everybody that's done the show calls me and says, "We want to do it again." And I know what your next question's going to be. Who was that one person?
Well, I was afraid to ask it, but
it was Tom T. Hall.
Oh, that's right. I know. Yeah, Tom T. You had to pull teeth to get Tom T. to do anything.
Well,
I
used my mind. I used my little trick book. I called his wife.
You called Miss Dixie?
He called Miss Dixie, and I said, "Miss Dixie, I know Tom's retired, but he needs to come do my show." She said, "You're right." So Miss Dixie got Tom to put a band together with Chris Jones and a bunch of folks, and they came over, did a full 1-hour episode. It was his last show.
Yeah.
It was his last show. It was on Song of the Mountains, and it was just great. But I called Tom about 2 years later. I said, "Tom, you ready to come back and do Song of the Mountains?" And he said, "Not in this lifetime. I'm done." So other than Tom T., and he's still a dear friend, everybody that does it wants to come back and do it again.
It's always so much fun to hang out backstage with everybody. Because on every show there are 4 acts. When you see the TV show, it's 2 acts. They film 2 shows at one time basically, and it's always fun. People say, "How was it hanging out with such and such?" I say, "I don't know. I wasn't on that show with them, but they decided to put us together."
Yeah, Andre Burris is our producer director, so we'll tape it. And people are sometimes a little shocked that it takes about a year from the time you tape before it actually gets on television. But what happens, we have to post-edit, and we've already got a year's worth in the pipeline.
Right.
So it takes about a year. We're trying to change that. We're working on some things now that maybe speeds that process up a little bit.
Well, I tell you what, it's a great show, and again, I get comments all over America traveling around about that show, and people really appreciate what you do up there.
Well, I hope so. I get those emails too. And songofthemountains.org for all of the information. Song is singular, mountains is plural.
And if you're going to be through this part of the country, if you're not from East Tennessee or southwestern Virginia, if you're going to be through this part of the country, go online and get tickets and come to one of the shows. It's held in one of the most beautiful old Art Deco theaters in America, the
Lincoln Theater.
The Lincoln Theater in Marion, Virginia. You'll have a great time, I guarantee.
It's one of 3 remaining Mayan-style theaters that remain in the United States.
Oh, it's incredible what they've done. The restoration was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Well, it was originally built as a movie theater, and when they did the renovation, they took out, I don't know, 4 or 5 rows of the front and extended the stage out. Now it's a performing arts theater.
Yeah.
Has been since '04 when they reopened it.
Yeah, beautiful theater. Okay, sitting here with Tim White in Bristol, Tennessee, and we were in Bristol, Virginia. All you have to do is straddle the white line, and you can be in half one state and half another on State Street up there. Tim, you've been here since
late 1974.
Moved here from Roanoke, Virginia. Bristol, Tennessee they call it the birthplace of country music, And I don't think many people would argue with that because so much came together here basically on one weekend.
Well, actually, it was about a week.
They were here a week.
Yeah.
As those of you who don't know, a gentleman by the name of Ralph Peer with Victor Recording came here. What prompted a man from New Jersey to come here?
Well, Ralph Peer had worked for the OK record label prior to going to Victor, and he had met a fellow named Pop Stoneman, Ernest V. Stoneman.
Yep.
And Ernest had a big hit in 1924 for the OK label called The Sinking of the Titanic.
Yeah.
And so when Ralph Peer went over to the Victor Company, they had this newfangled electronic recording.
Yeah.
Prior to that, you had to kind of scream into or sing into a funnel and it cut it in the wax.
Right.
Now they had new electric microphones, a new way of recording things, and Ralph Peer was at Victor, and he'd want to go down south and tape some of this southern music. They didn't even call it country music. Didn't even call it hillbilly music yet. So he called his old friend Ernest Stoneman and said, "Hey, we want to come down. I'm going to bring this equipment in the trunk of my car, and we want to come down to Galax and do some recording."
To Galax, Virginia.
Yeah. And
just north of here.
So Pop convinced him the best place to go to a railroad town called Bristol, more accessible. And so Ralph Peer took his advice. They came to Bristol on the Tennessee side of State Street at 410 State Street. And of course the Stonemans, Ralph Peer already knew them, so they were the first to record. And I think it was on the 25th of July, if I'm not mistaken. And they, prior to them arriving, they put out newspaper ads and word of mouth and had a call for talent. You know, come in, Ralph Peer with the Victor Company is going to be in Bristol to record. And I think they went through the first few days of August, maybe August 4th or 5th recording. And out of those 80-some groups and individuals that were recorded by Ralph Peer at 410 State Street, the first superstars of country music came out.
Yeah.
And that was, of course, the Stonemans, the original Carter family, A.P., Sarah, and Mother Maybelle, and the father of country music, Jimmy Rogers, the Blue Yodeler.
Yeah, Mississippi Blue Yodeler.
Yeah, and I painted the mural back in 1986 commemorating those sessions. And from left to right, you got Mr. Ralph Peer there in the white coat. And then you move on over, and there's the Carter family, A.P., Sarah, and Mother Maybelle.
Right.
In the center is Nipper the dog.
Yep.
With the Victor label.
The Victor label, yeah.
And
his
then,
master's voice.
That's right. And then there's Ernest V. and Hattie Stoneman. They recorded, like I said. And then on the far end, in the blue jacket with the railroad cap and the thumbs up, is Jimmy Rogers.
It's really interesting, you know, my family's all from western North Carolina, from Buncombe County, and that's where Asheville is. And Jimmy Rogers had come to Asheville to try to get on the radio station there, and was playing with a couple of boys. The
Grant brothers.
Yeah, from down near Old Fort, Marion area. And he saw a flyer and decided he was going to come, and I think the boys decided it wasn't worth it. They weren't going.
Well, actually, what happened, they came over together.
Oh, did they come together?
Yeah,
okay.
They came over together and got in an argument with what they were going to call the band. And I think they were the Geneva Ramblers, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds familiar, yeah.
And Jimmy Rogers wanted his name out front. Well, anyway, they disbanded, from what I've heard, on the way over. So Jimmy just said, "I'll record by myself." So everybody remembers Jimmy Rogers, but the Grant brothers are kind of a footnote in history now, even though they were really good.
Yeah.
But Jimmy Rogers, of course, he died at an early age from tuberculosis.
Right.
But he really was a superstar in those days. And you know, Ralph Peer, the original Carter family, and Jimmy Rogers have been in the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville for years and years. An oversight, I think, by the Country Music Foundation was leaving Pop and Hattie Stoneman out for so many years. But at the time that I painted the mural, Hattie and Ernest V. were not in the Hall of Fame. But fortunately, back in 2008, they were put into the Country Music Hall of Fame. So everyone on that mural now is in the Country Music Hall of Fame.
That's great.
And had it not been for Ernest Stoneman,
It wouldn't have happened?
it wouldn't have happened, or at least not in Bristol.
Yeah. Well, we probably would never have known AP and Sarah and Mother Maybelle, the Carter family.
That's right.
And who knows, probably not Jimmy Rogers.
Yeah, because
he was having a hard time getting anything going.
he was starving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was having a hard time getting anything going.
Had a little baby, and
Yeah.
when they came
From Meridian, Mississippi?
Mississippi, and when they came to Bristol, his wife stayed across the street on State Street, and in a little motel. And I've read her book. She said she was, I think, on the second or third floor, looking out, wondering what was going on across the street, because Jimmy had went over there to record for Ralph Peer, but they were starving at that point in time.
Yeah. Well, he sure took, you know, the two acts that really took off, of course, were the Carter family. Their records sold hugely. They may have had the first million-selling record, one of their singles, I think. But, you know, Sarah wanted to stay home. They had kids. They lived up in Mesa Springs, and they didn't travel widely. But Jimmy Rogers did. He played a lot of the vaudeville theaters all over.
Right.
So he got out more than they did. Of course, later on, they went to border radio in Mexico and were.
Yeah, Carter family did.
Yeah, the Carter family, and were, you know, and were heard all over America then. And I remember Maybelle talking about, you know, they would be on the air in the morning, and she would talk to the kids back home and tell them to, you know, to dress up for school and don't forget your books and all that sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
Talk to the kids over the radio. And then in the summer, they would go down and
it's quite a story.
Yeah. But Bristol is still known as a music city. The Rhythm and Roots Festival has turned out to be a really big thing here, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's a big event. I think they're celebrating their 20th year now.
Boy, has it been 20 already?
Yeah. So they've done very well with that. People come from all over. Of course, I founded or co-founded the Birthplace Country Music Museum back in 1994. It's doing well. If you've never been there, you need to go take that in. It's wonderful.
If you're going to be through, again, this part of the country, and you're a fan of roots American music, you don't want to miss that. There's a lot of interesting stuff there.
And you know, we've spoke about Song of the Mountains in nearby Marion, Virginia. It's 40 minutes outside of Bristol up Interstate 81. You've got the Carter family fold nearby.
Let's talk just a little bit about the Carter family fold. Tell us how that came about.
Well, back after AP and Sarah, they were man and wife. They ended up getting divorced, and you know, there were two branches of that tree for the Carter family. There was Mother Maybelle's side of the family.
Right. She was married to Moxie.
Right, and then there was the AP and Sarah side branch of the tree, and the Mother Maybelle side ended up with the Carter sisters, Helen, Anita, and June. So they pretty much toured nationally and worldwide, I guess.
Oh yeah, they were with the Johnny Cash show forever.
Yeah.
And of course they were at Folsom Prison with him and all
that.
Yeah,
yeah, it's one of my favorite recordings. But the other side of the tree, Sarah and AP split up. She moved out to California, got remarried, so AP stayed around, and he decided he was going to open a music barn.
He had a store in
Mississippi. It started in the store. Actually, that's where it was. And he started having some music there at the A.P. Carter store, which still is standing. If you go to the Carter Fold in Hilton's, Virginia, you can tour it. It's now a museum. His birth cabin's there as well. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so when A.P. he died in 1960, and he knew his time was drawing nigh, and he told his daughter, the late Jeanette Carter, she's passed now, but he said, you know, out of my children, you're the one I think can carry on my legacy. I want you to continue the music here and make sure it thrives. And I interviewed Jeanette one time, and he said, Jeanette, he said, when I die, he said, don't let the brambles and the briars and the weeds grow up over my grave. He said, I think one day people will want to come see where I'm buried.
Mm-hmm. And they do.
And they do. It's right there at Mount Vernon Church, and Sarah's buried there as well. But it's quite a story. Too much to get into in this short interview we're doing, but It's just ground zero for the birth of country music's right there in Macy Springs, Virginia, near Hilton's, Virginia.
It was one of the last places that Johnny Cash played.
Yes, it was. Maybe the last.
It may well be.
I was there that night.
Were you?
Yep. And it's just so much history there. And you can see that A.P. Carter store, which is the museum, his birth cabin. And since the store, many years ago, they built a big barn, a big, huge music area. And they have not only music there, but if you like to flatfoot and clog, you can go there. If you just like to watch, it's fun to do that. And then they got a heck of a kitchen.
Yeah.
If you like to eat, they got
they
good
do.
food there. And their website's carterfamilyfold.org.
Well, this whole area, if you're a fan of old time music, bluegrass music, roots American music, Americana music, if you come to this part of the world, to southwestern Virginia, East Tennessee, western North Carolina, you can spend a whole vacation here, and the scenery's not bad either, is it?
It's good. It's a good place to be.
It is a good place to be.
Yeah.
And the Ridgewood Barbecue's not far from here. I think we ought to shut this down and go find some good eats.
I was hoping you'd say that.
Tim, it's been great seeing you here. Thanks for having us in your home.
Thank you, friend. I appreciate you, and I like what you do.
Well, thanks a lot. Folks, that's it. Thanks for tuning in to Mostly Acoustic. We appreciate you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.